Delving into ancient Jewish texts and deciphering Hebrew's hidden meanings, Rabbi Daniel Lapin welcomes you to Tower of Power, Decoding the Secrets of Babel. Now, here is today's program.
Hi, I'm Rabbi Daniel Lapin. This is my wife, Susan. And together we lead the ministry, the American Alliance of Jews and Christians. We live near Seattle, Washington, and we travel the world bringing ancient Jewish wisdom to everybody, regardless of background. And one of the areas of most misunderstanding that I have found is that people have bought into the lie that religion is somehow bad for society, that religion is bad for civilization. And I am constantly involved in battles in different cities around the country, people trying to get rid of a cross that has stood in San Diego, California since World War I, all of a sudden is offensive. This is very disturbing. A tiny little cross on the seal of Los Angeles County. And this is repeated again and again. Cities around the country, a statue of the Ten Commandments has sat there for 150 years. All of a sudden, this is a terrible thing. And I spend a lot of time and energy trying to correct this in people's minds, making people understand that the Bible is the antidote to barbarism. You do not want to live in an environment of chaos and anarchy and barbarism, and the only bulwark against that is the Bible. And I like people to really understand that it is not an accident. And I want to tell you something really very, very seriously, and that is that in the last 1,000 years, it is not an accident that over 98% of all the technical or medical discoveries, the scientific developments that have emerged, 98% of them have come about from Christian countries, if not specifically Christian scientists. And indeed, some of the key scientists who introduced the Industrial Revolution were people who were devout Christians. And look, I'm an Orthodox Jewish rabbi, but this is really important for us all to understand. Some of those scientists are
Kepler, Isaac Newton. Well, I don't know about the Industrial Revolution.
Leading up to it, though, yes.
There's a lot of misinformation about Galileo, who actually, rather than being opposed to the church, was a religious man.
Exactly right. So we really need to understand, why do you think this is? Is this just a coincidence? I mean, how is it that all the wonderful inventions that make life safe and pleasurable and possible in many cases, medical, technical, transport, I mean, think about it. None of these things were invented in non-Christian countries.
Communication. Samuel Morse is another religious Christian.
Samuel Morse, my goodness, this was the introduction of the telegraph in the middle 1800s. First time information could travel faster than a man could ride a horse. What was the opening words, the very first words ever sent down an electric wire? What hath God wrought? From the 23rd chapter of the book of Numbers. And it's really important that we understand this. And I want to tell you why it is. Not a coincidence. The reason is very simple. The reason is the following. Look, imagine that I said to you, if you were a big enthusiast of Elvis Presley's music, and I said to you, you know, what would you really like to do? If I could let you invite anybody to have dinner with you tonight, who would it be? You'd say, well, Elvis Presley. I'd love to have the king. And I'd say to you, listen, I wish I could do that for you. I cannot. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us. However, here's the next best thing. I can give you a day in Graceland in Memphis listening to Elvis Presley music. If you just absorb the work that the man created, you will get to know the man. In the same way, if you want to get to know God, one of the ways of doing that is to get to understand his creation. And therein you get the secret of why so much, an overwhelming proportion, over 98% of the great developments of science and technology and medicine all came about from people who could understand and complete the following sentence. In the beginning, God
created heaven and earth.
We all know it.
So studying heavens, astronomy, space, and earth is the
natural
way
sciences.
to get
it's
to
a
know
way
God.
to get to know God. And that is why people who followed the Bible were the people who led the entire planet in understanding physics and chemistry and mathematics and medicine all along. That's not to say that every single scientist was a God-fearing Christian. He wasn't. But a majority of them, many of them were, and they were part of a culture. Even if they were not practicing, they were part of a culture that recognized it. And that's why it is that in the 1950s, President Eisenhower was able to add the words "under God" within the Pledge of Allegiance. It's not to say that every single American was religious. They weren't. But even those that weren't understood, in a way you don't find today, the centrality of religious faith in preserving the culture and in protecting the environment in terms of safe and tranquil ways for human beings to live.
Now, where does this come in? Where do we start when we're looking at the Bible to say how should human beings live? Where would you go for the beginning?
Well, of the many Torah teachings that it is our privilege to bring to people around the world, I really think that one of the most important to start with is called, and I think, by the way, I think it was the very first one that we've produced. So we wanted people to answer that very question, which is, how do you find patterns for living? And clearly, one of the most important places is chapter 11 of the book of Genesis, the story of the Tower of Babel. And that's what we're focusing on. And perhaps the best place to go right from here is to imagine that a few of us are sitting around one evening, and let's say that it is February or March, and we're sitting around, and all of a sudden I jump up and I say, come on everybody, let's go over to the hardware store and let's buy a whole bunch of 2x4s.
Excuse me?
Huh? 2x4s, come on, let's go get some lumber.
You know, I'm going to watch some TV, thanks. You tell me when you get back.
See? Even my own wife.
And we don't even have a TV.
even my wife isn't interested in going with me to the hardware store to get some lumber. You know why? Because there's no passion in that. You know, there's the old story of the traveler watching somebody traveling by the side of the road. There's somebody hammering at a stone, and the fellow's glum and miserable and upset. And he says, "What's the matter?" He says, "Oh, I've got to shape the stone all day." And he goes a few more miles, and he sees somebody else, and he's also hammering on a stone with a mallet and shaping the stone. But he's singing a song. His heart is light. He's cheerful. He's got a smile on his face. He says to him, "Hey, what are you doing?" The guy says, "I am building a church."